Every story begins with a spark. In this magical book, word weavers of all stripes and colors come together, sharing their words like sparks, their journeys like stars, their voices like echoes of wonder. Stories that inspire, challenge, and connect us all. Authors reveal the roots of their journeys, the stories behind their
Does
stories.
your personal journey of self-discovery shape the narrative of the book?
Where conversations flow freely, rippling with ideas that connect
very
and
timid,
inspire.
bashful, all the way into adult years. And then God gave me a revelation of what those words mean. And they're all rooted.
Unraveling the mysteries of narratives and discovering wonders
We
waiting
have
within.
Eloquently Barking, Anecdotes, Thoughts, and Observation by Roland Jones. So this is an anthology of stories, or anecdotes.
The Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 7, where narratives rise, ignite, and flow. Save the dates.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest author or speaker during this live session are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Reader's Magnet. The content shared is for informational purposes only and does not constitute endorsement or promotion of any particular belief, ideology, or product.
Hi, welcome to Festival of Storytellers. My name is Jill Suzanne Nypower. I am the host of Author of the Hour today, and I'm really excited to share and bring on board Daniel J. Donoghue. He has wrote a story called The Light in the Wilderness, A Fortunate Son and Other Stories. His background is about love, loss, desire, regret, family bonds, and navigating emotional struggles. So we're going to bring him on board and hear all about his story and some wisdom and some insights of how he has been able to overcome situations and empower himself. So Daniel, we would like to welcome you on stage. Welcome, Daniel. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to get right into it. I was reading a little bit and I thought it was really interesting how you've been in the Army and you have scars of military life and battled, with mental health. And that's a really hard thing to overcome. I read how you like to connect your readers through authenticity and insight. And I'm a huge believer of alignment and navigating our emotions, having it teach us to direct us to the right direction that to take our life, to elevate, to learn, and to grow. So I would like to ask you how your authenticity has helped you on your journey, what it means to you, and how it affects your faith and your morals in your writing.
Authenticity, I hope that comes through. I mean, It's fiction, my stories, but I do want them to feel authentic. I do want them to feel real to the reader.
Right.
And regarding, my faith, um, I owe everything to God. I would, whatever talents I have as a writer or anything else in my life, all comes from God. And I try periodically throughout these stories to talk about that, or to describe that. I believe faith has an important role in all of our lives.
Yes, it helps heal us. It helps us to get in touch with different areas, and then we can express it through our stories and live events or fiction events that help us to grow, right? And to use our imagination. I would like to know how you write about your painful experiences, how your personal experiences kind of get woven into some of your stories. How do you bring those experiences into your own life?
Yeah, that's a challenge. A few of these stories, not all of them, but a few of these stories are based on personal life experiences I've had. And they are troubling. They were troubling to me at the time. Obviously, I was going through trauma in some cases. And,
So how did you write about that?
excuse me?
How did you write about that trauma?
Oh, yeah. So you got to step away from yourself. I had the idea after experiencing it, the situation, that I did want to write about it. I felt it was something that I needed to get out. And I had to step away from myself before I started the story. I painted the story in my mind how I wanted it to go, but I had to look at it objectively before I started writing about it.
Right. So, sometimes when we think about experiences and then we feel those feelings and then we write about them, we kind of get them out of our body and out of our mind, and then it's easier to work through them. But it can be scary, right? To actually feel those feelings, let them come up, and then to put them on paper in front of the world. So you're very brave to be able to do that, and I acknowledge you for that. And so, the ideas, how did you come up with your ideas?
Well, they come from various sources. A number of the stories came from personal observation. A couple I observed at a restaurant. A number of them come from things that I've read, articles I've read, or things that I've read, like A Fortunate Son. The title story came from an article I read about a disabled veteran. And some of them were just, like 30 Seconds Over Iowa is just a satire. It's the only satire I've ever written. So they come from different places. But, not many of them are based just on personal experiences I've had in my life.
So the ones that aren't personal, how do you come up with the ideas? Like you just kind of, does it just pop in your brain, or do you like meditate, or do you, like do people give you ideas when you just talk to them? Like how does it really come to form in your mind?
Well, like if you look at things that I've read, like A Fortunate Son, the title story, I read an article in the paper about a disabled Marine veteran in a wheelchair who was stabbed repeatedly, sent to the hospital. And I was touched by the story. I was concerned by the story.
Right.
And I decided that I put a life around him and said this story should be told.
I love that. Really spreading awareness, right? Because there's so many of our personal experience, we go through things and we get missed, or
I didn't hear the question. You froze up there.
You got me? Are you there?
Yeah, I got you now.
I'm so sorry about that. It's one of those technical difficulties.
Sure, sure.
That's okay. Anyway, yeah, I think it's really important that I notice that you bring awareness to certain stories, because a lot of the times we go through experiences and we get missed, and people do need to hear about our stories. They need to hear what we go through so it can help bring awareness and teach other people that they're not the only person going through hard experiences. And the more that we share those experiences, the more we grow. We can understand, we can see from a different perspective. So I really love that you shared that. Can you tell us about anything else that you might have written?
Uh, well, I've written a few things. I wrote a novel uh, called Gold in the Furnace, which will be published this summer by Olympia Publishing. And that concerns an illicit love affair between an American diplomat and a Serbian woman in Yugoslavia as the civil war in Yugoslavia breaks out in 1991. Uh, so their illicit love affair takes place against the backdrop of the war. I've written a screenplay based on that novel. I've written a play called Truth Be Told about growing up in New Jersey in the 1970s. And I've written a number of other short stories that were not published in this book.
Okay. That's really good. I like that. Okay, we're gonna go right into the unquote segment of our series. So I'm gonna read a quote, and then I want you to tell me. How this resonates to you in your book. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so he felt blessed by the things he did have.
Yeah, so that relates to the story about someone whose life was, by any accounts, by any outside observer, would say he had a miserable life. He just struggled from birth through wherever he is now, and so that the faith, to me, is what helps people get through their troubled times, their troubled life, and so that's where that comes from.
So like, what good was there? Any good that maybe he used to build off of to keep him going?
Well, in like in The Fortunate Son, it was the power of Scripture.
Right. I love that. It's so powerful scripture, isn't it? Like, all the space in between the words, the coding underneath it can really empower you, like we're wonderfully made, and we're not what people says about us, but we're what God says about us. So I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that about the scriptures. Okay, how about I never figured out what the rules of the game were.
Yeah, that was that's actually one of the favorite things I've written. And the times we live in, not just now, but really over the past few decades, where you have issues like homelessness, where you have issues like war, where you have issues like a government that doesn't care about you, a government that takes things away from you, a society that doesn't value you, if, like, say, you're homeless. Um, so this individual, the story that I created, the guy did not find out. The guy did not find out what the rules of the game are, what he had to do to belong, what did he have to do to join society.
Right.
And he just never figured out the rules. He never got the rule book on what it takes to do those things.
That's kind of how it is in our life too, right? We are just kind of thrown into this game of life and we have to figure it out. And I guess that's part of the journey too, is learning what works for us, what doesn't, what we want to buy into, what we want to feed, what we want to see grow. And that was one thing I wrote in my own books, is learning the game of life, and how to play it. And you're either being played or you're playing the game, and learning to take our power back, right? But when no one tells you you have powers, it's hard to recognize that. And so, yeah, I think that's really interesting. How about, I felt church was a haven?
It's a story about a young, well, not a child, more of a teenager, who was witnessing during the civil rights movement. He was watching, even in his own town, horrible things happening to his family, his friends, and the one haven he had, the one place where he had during this turbulent time in his life, where he felt at home, was when he went to church.
Every story begins with a spark. In this magical book, word weavers of all stripes and colors come together, sharing their words like sparks, their journeys like stars, their voices like echoes of wonder. Stories that inspire, challenge, and connect us all. Authors reveal the roots of their journeys, the stories behind their
Does
stories.
your personal journey of self-discovery shape the narrative of the book?
Where conversations flow freely, rippling with ideas that connect
Very
and
timid,
inspire.
bashful, all the way into adult years. And then God gave me a revelation of what those words mean. And they're all rooted.
Unraveling the mysteries of narratives and discovering wonders
We
waiting
have
within.
Eloquently Barking, Anecdotes, Thoughts, and Observation by Roland Jones. So this is an anthology of stories, or anecdotes.
The Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 7, where narratives rise, ignite, and flow. Save the dates.
Okay, so we're having technical difficulties, of course, because we're having such a powerful message. But we're going to go right into our picture segments. So I'm going to show you a picture, and you're going to tell me how it relates to your book. So the first one is going to be the weight of the past. How does this picture register and describe in your book?
It's a story about when I was a young kid, about 10 years old. My father had left us some years earlier. We were living, me and my brother, with my mother. I was walking home from school one day, and I saw him about a block away from me, just looking at me. And I got petrified, and I ran home. And so that picture is kind of, example of a boy kind of sitting, you know, outside of his home, very worried about what was going on.
Right. Yeah, that's I can feel that. Okay, so we're going to go to the next one. It's going to be war and the cost of survival. How does this relate? How do you resonate with it?
The picture itself, I mean, I was in the Navy for 4 years, and I wrote a story about that as well in the book. But this picture here relates to the Marine veteran that forms the title of the book, A Fortunate Son. This is a man in a wheelchair. He served in Vietnam. He served his country. Was disabled while he served in Vietnam, and I kind of just put a life story around uh, his that picture, in the sense of he was in a wheelchair, he was disabled, he lived near the beach, he played a clarinet, and the picture just shows, even though you had the tremendous he lost his legs, he lost movement in his legs, forced in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, but he still, carried on. He still carried on.
Yeah, that's real power. That's real strength, right? Is, we lose certain parts of us, but we still see the good. We still enjoy what we can. And, gratitude can take us a long ways. No matter what we go through, we can always overcome. We can always, our spirit is strong, right? And so then I think there's another one here called Life on the Margins. How does this resonate?
You put the margin. There's a couple of stories in the book where I deal with, um, like, a homeless woman who's pregnant. A few other stories where, you know, people. There's so many people in our society that live on the margins, that are outside of what we all would consider, quote unquote, a normal life. You know what I mean? There's so many people who don't have that, and living on the margins is, it's a very hard life. It's very hard to live your life that way and to not be valued by society.
Yeah, I mean, that's I love that you bring up that picture and you bring awareness to it because, people that do have a lot forget that, a lot of people do struggle and maybe simple things are really difficult for some people. And I think it's our state of mind as well, right? If we're fed negativity, it shrinks us, it makes us feel bad. And then, we lose hope. And if there's no one to believe in us and to feed us and to breathe life into us, it's traumatizing, it's hard and it's heavy. And so I love that you bring awareness to this, that we can remember that there's, smiling to people and lifting people up and encouraging people is the way to go, is to help bring these people into, feeling valued, because when they feel valid, then they can grow, and then they get inspired and they believe in themselves. But it's always nice when we have someone on the outside. It makes it easier to believe in us, right?
Right.
Okay, so the next one we get to is searching for meaning. How about this one? I really like this, with all the question marks sitting there, like looking lost. How purpose and suffering, how do you think this relates to finding purpose?
Well, this is an interesting picture. I've never seen this before. Yeah, I like the picture. Searching for meaning. I mean, I think it's really part of each of the stories in the collection. Each of these stories reflect a person or people um, dealing with issues that they're having trouble dealing with. Whether it's traumatic or not traumatic, whether it's just a slice of life, a slice of a bad day. You know, I hope the search for meaning, kind of counts for everyone in the book. All the characters in the book, they're all searching for something.
Right. That's the thing, right? We're always hunting for something, for answers, for freedom, for money, for happiness, and what I love about God is when you go within, and you tune out the outside noise, you can hear him more strongly, and he can direct you into purpose and guide you from your heart what's important to you and help you to seek and get the answers that you're looking for. I think too much we get lost in distractions and we get stuck looking outside of ourselves, and then we're lost, right? Whereas
Right.
if we pull back, then we can find that meaning. Well, what's my purpose? What can I do to make a difference, right? And but as for thinking that and feeling that, then we can put that out there. But if we don't know to ask that, how can we create that, right? So I
Right.
really love that's in there describing that. The last one I have here is you finding grace in unexpected places. I like this, and how he's like playing the instrument, how he's like finding happiness through that. How is that, how is that related to your book?
Repeat the question, please. I didn't hear the beginning.
Sorry, finding grace in
Oh,
unexpected places. So like I see that he's, on his flute there, and so that's bringing him joy, right? Like playing an instrument. And so he's finding, happiness in, even though maybe it doesn't look so great on the outside, right? But he's creating it from within. And so, how do you think that art and music and can help in these in situations that are great to lift your spirits?
I think art and music have a great deal to do with being able to lift our spirits. That picture there of the gentleman playing the clarinet again comes from the title story. Um, the man's troubles were so deep and so entrenched, but playing the clarinet, even for a short amount of time, even if there was no audience, playing the clarinet lifted him.
I can see that because when we tune into different frequencies, it raises us up, right? It lifts our spirits, like you said. And, that's why I love poetry. It's why I wrote my books. I wrote 4 books myself of poetry because makes us think. It puts us in our creative mind instead of survival mind, right? We get too stuck into the everyday noise and to-do list. But when we can step back and start appreciating the little things, like the food that we're eating, the music that we're listening to, dancing to a song, reading poetry that inspires us, that brings out our emotions, can lift us, right? It elevates us. So I really love that. I love that, your different short stories can relate to different areas to help people really reflect. um so I want you to promote your book and tell us, about your book, and then about, you said you have a new one coming out, is that correct?
I have a novel coming out in the summer.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Well, the novel, I briefly mentioned it earlier. I lived in Yugoslavia in 1990, 1991. I met my wife there. I was stationed in Zagreb with the American consulate. She was stationed in Belgrade as a political officer. And the law at the time, not the law, the State Department regulations said that American diplomats could not socialize or fraternize with Yugoslav citizens because the State Department still listed them as a communist country. So I came up with, the characters of George Childs, the American diplomat, and Nana Vukovic, the Serbian woman. They're not based on me or my wife. What I did was put the skeleton of the situation that we had and created these characters. And the love affair, they have to be furtive in their meetings throughout the region. And their love affair intensifies as the Yugoslav Civil War breaks out in 1991. And then they're faced with the end of their, a messy breakup of their relationship, and then their search for each other as the war rolls on. So that's the novel, Gold in the Furnace, published by Olympia Publishers. The short story collection, Fortunate Son and Other Stories. I wrote these stories over 40 years. I wrote them at different times of my life, different experiences that I was having at the time that I wrote them. And I sent them out for publication and all that stuff, but I really didn't expect, I was writing for myself. I didn't really expect much to happen with them, you know. So, I put them.
This is the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 7. A virtual celebration of narratives that rise, ignite, and flow shaped by every force of life. Storytellers unite to weave tales, sparking imagination, blending voices, and forging bonds that linger beyond the final word. A storyteller steps into the spotlight, sharing their journey, their book's soul, and the magic within.
There's things in our lives.
Some stories set your soul on fire. Others carry you with waves of feeling deep.
So I was used to eating healthy, fresh.
There are tales that ground you rich in tradition, anchored in truth.
I can't tell you how excited I am.
And some just take flight playful, dreamy, defying gravity. Oops, that was loud, but so are these stories. Bold, awakening, brilliant.
For you.
This is not just a book fair, it's a universe of storytellers, creators and readers discovering the power of narrative together. Join the Festival of Storytellers Chapter 7 today. Share your voice, discover new worlds, and be part of a story bigger than any one book.
Hey, sorry about that. We've had some technical difficulties, I guess, and you've been really patient, and I appreciate it, Daniel. And yeah, it was interesting how you said, over 40 years you wrote these stories. Like that's huge, and you're just finally inspired to just kind of put it together and put it out there. Hey,
I actually self-published the book in 2002, but obviously nothing happened with it. And
but
then my
now
publisher, the Ewing Publishing, who published the book, apparently found a copy of that old self-published short story collection, and they reached out to me and asked if I'm interested in publishing it.
that's great. I love that. See how little things work out that way?
Yeah.
We're going to invite our QR onto the show, and I think we're going to get some questions from the audience because I had to switch from my computer to my phone because of internet stuff. We're going to invite our QR onto the stage now.
Hello, Daniel. Hello. Hi, Jill.
Hi!
Yes.
Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No, you know what? Even though with the technical issues and all, the audience online or audience on social media are actually, very, very engaging, and they're very noisy, asking questions. So I believe
Thank you.
you should also hear them. So Dan, we have several questions for you on social media. We have, let me go ahead and check. All right, we have one from Michelle Stump. So we'll give you time, to go ahead and answer these questions, Dan. The question is, what made you decide it was time to gather these stories into one collection?
Well, short story collections don't get published anymore. Books are novels now. Very few short story collections get published. And I grew up reading John Updike, and some of the great short story writers. And I thought maybe this would resonate with people.
We also have another one from Carol Depp. Feel free to read, um, Jill.
I can't. I'm sorry because I'm
Let me
on
go
my
ahead and read
phone.
it for you.
I'm so
So here's
sorry.
the question. It's do you grapple with violence in Fortunate Son?
Well, the only violence really, there's 2 points of violence. One is uh, where he got blown up in Vietnam. Not too great a description of the actual battle, but some. And the other violence is, of course, when he gets stabbed repeatedly in his wheelchair near the beach. Uh, that was probably the most violent act in the story.
All right, that's the answer to your question, Carol. Okay, next question. We have another one from Michelle Stump. I wonder if it I wonder if it'll feel too bleak for me. How much of it focuses on the darker side of the themes?
Great
Well,
question.
yeah, that is a great question. I hope, much of it does not focus on the dark. I mean, I don't feel that it does. Even some of the themes that are difficult to deal with or challenging, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope, there's faith, there's something that's going to help these characters get through the next steps in their lives.
Another one from Alani. All right, her question is, how does A Fortunate Son and other stories reflect Daniel's personal journey, your personal journey and growth over the years?
Well, it tracks exactly with my life. I wrote my first short story in 85, and I was in the Merchant Marines at the time. And it just, again, I read a lot when I was young, read a lot of fiction, and I just felt the urge to try writing myself, to try to write fiction.
Mhm.
And my personal journey, I mean, my life, I moved on from the Navy and the Merchant Marines. I became a stay-at-home dad for a couple of years. I worked in the information technology field for like 20 years. I mean, my life changed, obviously, repeatedly, as it does for everyone, over the course of time.
I have
And
a question.
sure.
How did you handle after the military? What helped you to really overcome some of those things that you faced?
I like that question. Yeah.
Well, um, the first thing I did when I got out of the Navy in 84, I went out to Los Angeles. I didn't have any money. My mother was living in Los Angeles. I went out and lived with her for a while, got some jobs like gripping golf clubs. I just got some menial jobs. Uh, then I worked for NASA for about a year. And then I joined the Foreign Service, the State Department. And that set me on a whole nother chapter.
Mhm.
We have another one, Jill. This is from Shirley Howard. Let me go ahead and check the
Oh, I see
question.
this one. Does the
Okay.
book get too heavy with the emotional baggage? Not sure if I'm ready for that. So, how do you describe the emotional baggage in the book?
Well, I mean, there certainly is emotional baggage in the book. There's emotional baggage in all fiction. I mean, that's what writing is. When you're writing short stories or a novel or whatever, there is emotional baggage that characters carry around with them and characters deal with. Whether it gets too heavy with emotional baggage, some of them do. Some of those stories deal with heavy emotional baggage, but many of them do not.
How do you handle emotional baggage in your life, Daniel?
Oh, I try to bury it.
How about you, Jill?
I used to, but
No,
that was heavy. It weighed me down, and so I
no,
learned by
I'm kidding.
acknowledging it, feeling it, and writing about it. I relieved me of that emotion, and that can be hard to do because feeling is overwhelming, right? As
Yes.
emotional creatures, it's heavy sometimes. Some of the stuff that we ingest and that we take in, but
Mhm.
if we allow ourselves to open up and to feel it, then we're free of it because then
Yes.
it's no longer holding us down like a weight, right? And you know, you just cry, let it out, and then you're lighter, and then you cry again, and then you're a little lighter and a little lighter, and then eventually the tears stop and the light starts to pour in. And that's what I found in my own life with my own books that I wrote the 4 books all about, you know, me learning how to turn my pain into power by facing it head on instead of running from it, instead of, you know, but mine are all true stories. Mine are all my own personal experiences so I could elevate, right? Because I couldn't go anywhere stuck in darkness. So I had to recognize I was the light and figure out how to shine. And I think that's part of our journey, right? And so you obviously have been shining, Daniel, writing your books and your second book coming out in the summer. So what really gives you the most inspiration to what do you love the most about writing?
First, I was only kidding when I said I try to bury my
Oh,
emotional baggage.
I never know. Some
I
people
try to
Jill's getting too serious, Dan.
do.
I try to write about it. But what do I like most about writing? I like the cathartic nature of it. As I
Mhm.
sit down with a blank page and I have an idea in my head as to how I want this story to go, there's a catharsis that comes from actually starting to type the story. And I
Agree.
just love that feeling that it gives me. So I really enjoy that about writing.
It's kind of
It's more of like a spiritual exercise, right?
like a
It's
meditation.
make you yes, or meditation. By the way, another Shirley Howard has been very engaging online. She has another question for you, Dan. Are the stories in the collection interconnected, or do they stand alone as individual narratives?
These are individual narratives. There's nothing connecting any of these stories to each other.
Mhm.
They're just separate vignettes, slices of life that I came up with.
Okay, just want to read Sophia Jade Otero's feedback. It's fascinating how Daniel's richly varied life experiences bring authenticity and depth to his storytelling. Wow.
Oh, it's very
Okay,
kind.
let's check some other questions here. Okay, another question from Shirley. Okay, let me go ahead and read that. Can you read this for us, Jill?
Yes.
Okay.
What role does Daniel's military experience play in the shaping of the themes of love, loss, and resilience in the book?
Well, I spent 4 years in the Navy. The last one is part of a merchant marine deployment. And military, I needed to be straightened out. I was leaving the uh, not a very good life. I was undisciplined. Uh, I didn't have any real goals. I decided to join the Navy, and it immediately turned me around right from boot camp. It immediately instilled with me a sense of discipline, a sense of purpose, and going through boot camp, and then my first few years aboard ship, and we'd spend between 4 and 6 months at sea. Each trip. I was mostly in the European theater. Um, but the last tour I did, or the last voyage I was on, we went to Lebanon, and we were there as the Israel-Lebanon war was going on in Beirut. And that we would sit on the fantail of the ship and watch the bombs, the tracer rockets, going from Israel to Lebanon. And it was surreal. It was surrealistic. to actually be sitting there and watching people die, basically, or getting
Mhm.
getting shelled. So it really it had a great effect. My military service had a great effect on my life.
I bet. It must have been really difficult for you. And I love that you are able to share this with us and help open our eyes to things that are going on and how you did how discipline did give you goals and set you in a new direction and helped you to see things differently and change your perspective and it's really important. And then how you said how your faith ties into it, how it gave you morality and it gave you a focus, and it really helped to navigate you in a way that like you wrote 2 books. And I think that's really cool. So I
Yeah,
really love that you shared that.
one of the stories in the book is actually based on that experience in Lebanon. Uh, Spring Men, Winter Children is a story that I wrote about that experience and about that time.
Dan, do you ever wish you could have had a different outcome in these stories that you've written? This is a question from Reginald McBride, by the way. Another question online.
That's a tough one. I don't think so.
Mm.
Um, I don't think so because with each of these stories, no matter when I wrote them in my life, I spent a lot of time wondering how I wanted it to end. I spent a lot of time about what would happen to these characters at the end of the story. And so I feel really comfortable the way it turned out, the way I ended the stories.
Another question we have, Jill, for Dan. Let me go ahead and show the question from Michelle.
What made you decide it was time to gather these stories into one collection? Ooh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a specific time. Again, I self-published these stories in 2002.
What made you want to
And
put it together though?
yeah, I wanted to put them together because I felt I had something to say. I felt that I was, pretty decent as a writer. I mean, I thought that I was a pretty good writer. And I've read the heavyweights when I was a teenager, Hemingway, Steinbeck, all of them. And I wanted to become part of that community. I mean, not that I will ever have as much talent as those guys, but yeah, I wanted to become part of that community.
I love that. And that's the thing. We feel like we have something to say. We have to say it or nobody will know. And so you did it. And that's huge. And then you give other people permission to be able to do it as well. Because, if we can do it, then someone else can do it. And so it's really good that you did that because now we're more aware and we can see things that we didn't know were happening before.
Exactly, I agree. And each one of us has its own story to tell, right? And we do have our own unique stories. And the only way that you get to inspire, motivate, and even uplift others is if you get to share your stories with everyone. And that's what we're doing here right now in the Festival of Storytellers. Yeah,
We should share your story with the world.
exactly.
Yeah.
Dan, another question from John Harry. How do you know when a deeply personal story is ready to be shared?
Wow, that's a great question. And that's a tough one to answer. The stories in the book, when I dealt with very difficult, traumatic times in my life, I didn't write them right away. I didn't write the stories right after going through the experience. It took time and distance. Uh, I did decide that I wanted to recount them in a story, those situations, but I needed time and distance before I could actually sit down and try to write them. And I edited those stories more than any other stories that I've edited.
And I'm going to ask a question. How did taking that time help you? Like during that time that you stepped back, how did that hit different for you?
It gave me distance,
Mm,
because in between those times when the incident happened and I wrote the story, other things were going on in my life. I was writing other stories, and
mhm.
it gave me the distance to approach it.
I think that also answers Jane Michael's question, right? Her question is, let me go. How did you overcome the urge to be less vulnerable or raw when times that you tried to hold back from writing or reviewing your book?
Um,
Mm-hmm.
the urge to be less vulnerable.
Yeah.
I, that's another good question. I really didn't have an urge to be less vulnerable. I really felt that what I experienced, and whether it got published or not, I didn't care when I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I felt the experience needed to be real. For me to have a catharsis about the experience, I needed to write about it honestly.
That's true.
Exactly. Let me
Mhm.
go ahead and read one comment from Catherine Lindsay. What interests me about this book is that it's about the truths of being human. It's not easy, life is messy, and we're very lonely people most of the time. What are your thoughts about these guys?
I
I,
think because we're an expression of God, right? And so we all bring something to the table. And if we don't come to the table, we can't connect. And so I loved how you said that we are lonely unless we share our experiences and we can relate to, going through similar situations, that we're not alone in the experiences that we go through. How about you, Daniel?
yeah, I think you answered it perfectly, Joe. I feel exactly that way.
All right. Okay, let me go ahead and check some other questions here. Our audience has been very energetic. They've been throwing us questions on social media. All right. Alani has another question. What inspired the title A Fortunate Son?
Well, the title, there's probably 6 or 7 stories, titles that come from rock and roll music. I'm a big rock and roll fan. A Fortunate Son was a great song by Creedence Clearwater Revival. But another story, One Like Duck, came from Jethro Tull. Anyway, I just have that. I don't come up with a title till I've written the story. And when I wrote the story of A Fortunate Son, well, I didn't call well, when I wrote the story, I felt that would be a great title because the song itself talks about, you know, people treating each other badly, the military treating you badly, the government treating you
Mhm.
badly, rich people treating you badly. And it struck me that that might be a good title for that story.
Go through several revisions, or that was like the first and final title?
That was the first and final title. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
How
I was
about
thinking,
you, Jill? Like, what's
oh,
your thought process when it comes to coming up with titles?
well, when you said that, all I could think about was, well, maybe they'll start treating us better. Maybe they'll start recognizing that there's a gap there. Like, why aren't we lifting people up? Why aren't we inspiring people? Why aren't we encouraging people? Why aren't we leveling out the playing field here? Like, why does it have to be this versus that? And so I love that you bring awareness to that, because we should be coming together in creativity, not what I have versus you have. That doesn't work, right? We're supposed to be competing against ourselves, and learning how to stay in our own lane and creating, instead of, you know, being stuck in systems and programs that keep us surviving, that don't take us anywhere, right? That doesn't go anywhere. So for me, titles all come from creativity of how this can be inspiring, how I can use this to build, how I can get other people to start thinking, to start feeling with their heart, and seeing beyond surface levels, more depth.
Our fairgoers has been watching us since we started the session. Reginald McBride here even brought up the burying of emotions, right? So he said, Dan says he buries his emotions. Is writing something therapeutic? Yes, right, Dan?
Yeah, well, as I said, I was kidding when I said bury my emotions. That's nothing that any writer does. No writer buries his emotions. So yeah, it is therapeutic and cathartic.
Mhm. Did you worry about the audience's reception of your stories? A question from Jamela Real.
Well, yes. You always wonder how a story or a collection of stories, what people are going to think about it.
Yeah.
Does it inspire them? Does it turn them off? You know, was reading it something they enjoyed,
Mhm.
or they felt like they wasted their time? You know,
But you get their feedback, I mean, before publishing or printing copies of the book, you consult probably friends, close friends first. Yeah,
yeah, sometimes.
sometimes. What was the worst feedback you both received from someone about your books?
The worst
Worst funny
feedback.
feedback. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I ever received anything horrible. I mean, the worst feedback I got is people saying, I don't like the way that ended, or, you know, nothing like intense or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I haven't really had a lot of negative feedback. I mean, you know, I think everything that we put out there is an experience, right? And so it's never
Exactly.
wasted. It's about a reflection and what can I learn from this and how can I grow? And if something is negative, okay, well, I don't need to feed that. I'm going to focus on what does work and not letting it trigger you, not feeding people that are just looking to complain because that's a lesson for them that they don't deserve attention.
Exactly.
But if it also doesn't work, then that's good. You can go focus on something different. Don't watch over here. Kind of
You
thing.
just you just need to be authentic with your own story,
That's right.
right from the heart, and then that's it, you know?
And I love
Okay.
that you did that. Thank you for sharing, Daniel.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Jill, Dan, it has been an interesting session. Thank you for allowing me time to share to you things that happen in the back end in the social media world. And our audience has been, throwing these questions, and I cannot not share this to you both, right? Like we need to also hear what they have to say. What questions do they have for Dan and for Jill? Thank you so much for
And
allowing
and it was
me
a
time to
pleasure.
share the session with you.
Thank you,
I
Daniel.
guess
It was
it's
a
book
pleasure.
promotion time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay, let's start with you, Dan. What book? Please promote your book, your upcoming books, upcoming events, and where can our audience grab a copy of the book?
Well, this is the short story collection, A Fortunate Son and Other Stories. You can get it off my website, which is DanielDonohueBooks.com, or you can get it off Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Um, the novel will be out in the summer. It's going to be published by Olympia Publishing, Gold in the Furnace. And hopefully I can do more things like that, like this, when the novel comes out.
I look forward to hearing more about it.
Exactly. And I can say, Dan, definitely we'll have more sessions, more roundtable sessions where you can promote not just your current book, your upcoming books, and even your upcoming engagements, book signings or whatnot. You can work with Readers Magnet through our roundtable session programs. Jill, it's your turn.
Okay, I guess since met with you last year, I wrote the one book and now I have three more books. So I've wrote four books in the last couple years. And my healing codes to enlightenment, activation codes for full authenticity and power, being unapologetically you, and transmuting pain into light. My books are found on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and also www.jillnypower.com through Archway Publishing. And yeah, you can just kind of Google my name, and I got podcasts and books and all sorts of stuff out there. And for me, it's to inspire you, to lift your spirits, to show you there's another way, a different perspective, to teach you what they don't teach you so you can expand and grow and shine your light.
All right. Let's end this session with our takeaways. Can we do that?
Sure.
All right. Let's start with, of course, our featured author of the hour, Dan.
What are my takeaways from this interview? Oh, well,
Yes. Yes.
it was my first experience with a hour-long interview. It was my first experience doing it on video, on camera, and it was very exciting. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking with Jill, and so it was. I'd rate this a very good experience.
Thanks, Dan. How about you, Jill?
I feel like Daniel is very brave to put yourself in the military, to change your ways, and then to write about really hard experiences that people went through and to process those emotions. That is very huge. And then to add in your own oomph into it, it takes a lot of discipline and strength to do that. And so I'm really inspired by you, Daniel, and I really appreciated that I got to connect with you and see a different point of view. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Jill. I feel the same way.
All right. Thank you so much. For myself, I'd say, be authentically you. You are your own story. You are yourself is the message of your own story. And your story needs to be heard because that will inspire, uplift, and make someone else's day, better. All right. Okay, thank you so much to our lovely audience. Thank you for engaging. We have how many views? 150 plus views. Oh, almost 200. Almost 200 views just for this session. Thank you so much for engaging with us, with the Reader's Magnet team, with our featured author here, Dan Donoghue, and our host, Jill Power. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
let's do this together. As we say here in Reader's Magnet,
We share your story with
with the
the
world.
With
world.
the world.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Okay.
This is the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 7. A virtual celebration of narratives that rise, ignite, and flow shaped by every force of life. Storytellers unite to weave tales, sparking imagination, blending voices, and forging bonds that linger beyond the final word. A storyteller steps into the spotlight, sharing their journey, their book's soul, and the magic within.
There's things in our lives.
Some stories set your soul on fire.
Of a grandmother that I
Others
loved.
carry you with waves of feeling deep.
So I was used to eating healthy, fresh
There are
food.
tales that ground you rich in tradition, anchored in truth.
I can't tell you how excited I am.
And
to
some
be on
just
right
take
now.
flight playful, dreamy, defying gravity. Oops! That was loud, but so are these stories.
God can do
Bold,
it for me.
awakening,
Yes,
brilliant.
for you.
This is not just a book fair, it's a universe of storytellers, creators and readers discovering the power of narrative together. Join the Festival of Storytellers Chapter 7 today. Share your voice, discover new worlds, and be part of a story bigger than any one book.